Hey guys, welcome back to my channel Bookalicious, where we discuss all things books. I'm so excited to be filming this new video. This is going to basically be a fun recap of all the books that I've read so far in the first half of 2024, which is crazy that we're already more than halfway through the year. I just can't even believe it. But this year has been such a good reading year for me, such a good reading year. And I started my channel, I think I started it sometime in January, and I never posted reading wrap ups for January and February and March. So I basically just want to talk about those books that I read, and I'm not going to go into a bunch of detail about the books that I've read in April and May and June because I have full reading wrap up videos for those books. So if you want to go check out those videos, then I would love for you to do that. But without further ado, let's get right into the video and talk about all of the books that I've read so far this year. So first up, we will be discussing all of the books that I read in January. I read a total of 6 books, technically 5, because one of them is a draft sent by one of my lovely bookish friends on Bookstagram, and she was so sweet to let me read her first draft of her book that she's going to be publishing next year. But first off, let's talk about The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle Jensen. I gave that book 3 stars. It is basically this enemies to lovers, arranged marriage, new adult fantasy romance book, and it was okay. 3 stars is the best rating I could give it because I really loved the tropes and I think the book had a lot of great potential. I just got so bored with this book at times. It put me into a little bit of a reading slump at the beginning of the year, which is why I didn't read that much books in January. And something about it just felt a little bit bland. The characters I could just not connect with. I liked them, but I couldn't really heavily connect with them the way I have with other couples in other books. And the writing style wasn't really special to me, and the fantasy politics, they were okay, but it wasn't like life changing at all. So I was very upset that it wasn't as good as what I had hoped it would have been because that book had been in my TBR for so long and it was a bit of a disappointment. But I did give it 3 stars because it wasn't a horrible book by any means. It just wasn't what I had wished it would be. But still, I think the tropes in this book were really well executed, and it was a quick book to get through. Or at least it would have been if I hadn't been put into a reading slump. But still, it wasn't like a super duper long book. It didn't drag out, so I'm happy about that. But that was The Bridge Kingdom. Didn't love it, but didn't hate it either. Then I read The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This is my very first Lucy Foley book, and it won't be my last. I gave it 4.25 stars. It's basically this thriller about this wedding that's taking place, and you're in the POVs of all of the members of the wedding party. So you get to see what the bride is thinking. You get to see the bridesmaid and the best man and the wedding planner. And all of these people have so many different secrets, and it all ends up coming to a big reveal at the end of the book, which was a little bit predictable. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like when you read thrillers, there's always a certain type of stereotypical character that you know is going to end up being the villain. And I'm a little bit tired of that trope, to be honest, where it's like this. I don't want to give anything away, of course, but it's where there's this like obvious stereotype of a character, and you know that they're going to be the big villain of the book. But regardless of that, I did enjoy this book. I loved having all of these different points of view, and I think that the atmosphere of this book was so good. It was very creepy and chilling and just very atmospheric and gloomy and just very interesting. And I love books about weddings, whether it's like a happy book set in like a wedding type of theme, or like a thriller book set with a wedding, or whatever it is. I love reading about weddings. I just do. And so I did enjoy this book. I really loved the writing style. I think the writing style was very eloquent and just very poised and very interesting to read about. So really, really enjoyed the guest list. And then I read In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. This is another adult thriller. It's basically about this big group of friends who went to this very prestigious college some years ago, and one of their friends ended up dead. And now it's like 10 or 12 years later, and they're all coming back for this big reunion, and everyone's got secrets, and eventually you find out the truth about why their friend ended up dead. And again, this was a really interesting thriller, and I gave it 4.25 stars, so obviously I really enjoyed it. I think the writing style was very breezy and quick to get through, and I loved the now and then timelines. The characters were a little bit basic, they were a little bit bland. I didn't hate the main character, but she was just a little bit of like a pick me girl, and she definitely made choices that I did not agree with at all. But regardless, this was such a fun book. I think that the trope of this specific stereotypical character being the villain was again something that I was tired of reading about, because again, there's this stereotype in thrillers and mysteries where it's always this one person that you know is going to end up being the villain, and I can't say what that is, without giving away who it is, who's the villain in this book. But I was expecting that plot twist. But what I will say is that even though I guessed who was behind the murder, I was so shocked when I found out why that person had killed the friend. Like, I was shocked by that reveal. That was crazy. I knew who it was, but I didn't know why they did it. And when I found out why, I was so shocked. But yeah, this was a really good book, and I definitely recommend this book if you are into academia and thrillers and mysteries and college setting. It was really good. The next book I read was Married by Wind. I gave it 2 stars. Definitely one of my least favorite books of the entire year. And it wasn't even a horrible book. It was just so bland and utterly forgettable. I can't even remember much about the plot or the characters' names. I can't remember much about this at all. And it's basically this just short romantasy series. It's Second Chance, which I think is a very bold trope to go with, especially in a romantasy book when it's like 200 pages. This book was super short, by the way. That's why I gave it 2 stars instead of 1 star, because I loved the short chapters. I love short chapters so much. But my issue with this book was that it's basically about this guy. I think he's like a shifter, or he has some type of magic or something, and he has some type of magic, and he previously was in a relationship with this girl who's not royalty at all. And the book is basically telling us, oh, they're so perfect together, they're a great couple, they love each other so much. But it's like, I never got to see them be in a relationship. I'm just hearing, oh, they were in a relationship that took place off the page. So how am I supposed to connect with their romance and find it believable? And I just didn't feel any chemistry between them at all. And I just wasn't really I don't know, I just didn't care about this book. I didn't care about the characters. I obviously didn't care about them because I don't even remember their names. And the writing wasn't bad, but it was just very bland, and it just didn't grip me, and it wasn't anything special. And I think the book was too short, which, I mean, I love short books, but it was just not, it should have been longer for the author to convey the relationship that they previously had and to make their romance stand out more. It should have just been a little bit longer and had more of a fleshed out plot. But yeah, I was upset that this book wasn't good because there's so many other books in this series, and I was so excited to read more of these books. But considering how I feel about this one, I don't think I'm going to continue with this series. But that was my experience with Married by Wind, and it was unfortunately one of my least favorite books of the year. Moving on to one of my favorite books of the year, Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Oh my goodness. I absolutely loved this book. 5 stars, first 5-star read of the year. And this is my very first R.F. Kuang book. I can't wait to read everything that she's written. I cannot wait to get to the Poppy War trilogy and Babel, which I recently purchased. I love this book. I'm pretty sure you might know what it's about, but basically, there's this woman named June, and she's a struggling author. She's never really gotten her big break, and she's best friends with another author named Athena. They went to college together, and Athena is super popular, super successful. Everything's going great until one night Athena dies, and that's not a spoiler. It's on the synopsis of the book. Athena basically chokes on a pancake and she's dead. And she's had this manuscript that she didn't get the chance to publish. And June, our main character, decides to steal the manuscript and finish it and then pass it off as her own original work. And this book was just such a wild roller coaster. And I loved all of the different social commentary about what it is to be an author and how you have to market your stories. And June was such an insufferable character, which she's supposed to be. I feel like I've seen so many reviews being like, why is the main character so unlikable? And she's supposed to be. She's supposed to be ignorant and just disrespectful without thinking that she is those things. She's a very ignorant type of racist, basically. And she's just so insufferable to read about, but then it's so interesting to see her fall down this spiral of lies that she keeps creating. She can't stop lying. And it all just comes to this incredible, tense conclusion. And I just absolutely loved this book. I couldn't put it down, and definitely one of my favorite reads of the year. So good. And then the last book that I read in January was The Draft that I talked about. And I can't talk too much about this book because it's not out yet. It won't be out until, I believe, January next year. But this is a book called These Starborn Secrets. And my lovely friend, I'm going to put her Instagram up on the screen so you can all go follow her. She posts so much fun content and so much good writing advice, and I just love her to death. She's such a sweetheart, and she was just so lovely to reach out and let me be someone who got to read her draft early. And it will be coming out very soon, sometime next year, I believe in January or February. And I'm just so happy for her, and she totally just deserves all of the success when it comes out. I think you all are going to love it so much. It's basically this super epic sci-fi romantasy book, and it has so many fun main characters, so many different POVs, and a lot of fun fantasy politics going on. And it's just basically, it's like Star Wars meets ACOTAR, basically, is the best way to describe it, mixed with like some Guardians of the Galaxy vibes too. And it's just such a good combination of tropes, and her writing is already just so impressive. And I just really loved this book, and it had so many great moments, and I can't wait for it to be published so I can have it on my shelf and talk about it even more, about the plot and detail and everything like that. And I can't wait to talk about all of the characters and all of the different romances going on as well. It's just so good, and I'm so, so proud of her and so excited for this to be published and to be able to see other people talk about it as well once it's published too. But yeah, I absolutely loved this book, and it was just such a fun addition to my reading month in January. Moving on to February, which was a very good reading month in terms of how many books I was actually able to read. The first book I read in February was Queen of Fire by R.J. Rogan, who is one of my favorite independent fantasy authors. Her books are so good, and this series is so, so much fun. This is the Princess of Earth series. The third book is coming out next year, and I cannot wait for that to come out. And I gave Queen of Fire 5 stars, and oh my goodness, what a wild ride. I can't talk too much about the plot because it would give away huge spoilers for Princess of Earth, and I don't want to spoil that because It's so much fun if you go in blind and don't even really know what to expect, because the story just takes a dramatic shift in this book, and the ending of this book was insane. But basically, it's this type of romantasy, enemies to lovers, kind of like arranged marriage situation going on with so much fantasy politics. This book has dragons in it as well. Dragons. So if you are a fan of dragons, which I'm assuming you are if you've read Fourth Wing, because that book made everybody be obsessed with dragons, then you will love this one as well. The main character is so charming and just so lovable instantly. The side characters are really good. The found family in this book is so good. So I highly recommend it. 5 stars, one of my favorite fantasy reads of the year. So good. The second book I picked up was City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. This is part of the Mortal Instruments series. This is book number 2, and I'm trying to make my way through this series so I can get to Infernal Devices. I'm trying. It's a fun series. It's not like it's this horrible series that I'm reading so I can make my way to Infernal Devices. It's a very Wattpad style type of series. So as long as you go into it expecting the cringy dialogue and the cringy tropes and the cringy characters and just the cringiness, then you'll be okay. This book was more fast paced than the first book in the series, which was City of Bones. I gave City of Bones 4 stars, and I gave City of Ashes 4.25 stars. So it was a little bit better in terms of just the pacing of the story. One thing about Cassandra Clare is that she loves long chapters. She just loves long chapters. So one chapter could be like 35 pages, one could be 50 pages, and her books are always almost 500 pages long, and they have like 19 chapters, maybe 20 chapters if you're lucky, maybe. But I wish she had shorter chapters because it would help pace out the books just much better and just keep me more invested. But yeah, this book is a wild ride for sure. I can't talk about it too much, being that it's the second book in a series, but I will say that I enjoyed the side characters a lot. I love Alec and Isabel and Simon so much. Those characters are the MVPs. Jace and Clary are interesting characters. They are interesting, and they gave me the biggest ick fest that I've ever felt in my entire life reading a romance book. It was just so icky, and I can't say why, but these books are popular. You probably know what I'm talking about. But yeah, they gave me huge ick, and it was hard to read the book anytime they had scenes together because I was just so grossed out. Um, they have a forbidden love trope, and if you know why it's forbidden, then it's just so gross. But once I got past that and was just able to enjoy the adventure of the book, then I had a much better time with it. So, City of Ashes, 4.25, it was a fun and icky time. This book, My Dark Vanessa, makes City of Ashes look like the most brilliant book in the entire world in terms of ickiness. Now, if we want to talk about ickiness, then let's talk about My Dark Vanessa. This book was 4 stars. It is basically this very in depth book about a student named Vanessa who is 15, and she's attending this new school, and she ends up getting involved with a teacher who is about 40 years old and is just the biggest piece of you know what that has ever walked the planet. He is clearly the smallest man who's ever lived, and this book was so difficult to get through, but the writing style was really good and captivating, and it felt like I was reading something that really happened. Apparently, this book was not based on the author's real experience. I don't think the author has had like an experience of going through that situation, thank God. But it felt just so real because this is a thing that happens so much where young girls and young kids are just getting preyed upon by these teachers and these, adults who are supposed to be protecting kids, not doing this to them. But yeah, the storyline was very hard to get through because it just felt too real. but then the writing was just really well done, and the main character was just, she was very intriguing, and just my heart went out to her so much. But yeah, this book was definitely not a light read. So if you are not in a good place, or if if you just don't think like you're ready to read a book up with this subject matter, then definitely don't read it. But if you are, then read it. But yeah, it was a very interesting read. It felt very important to read as well. But it was just one of those books that infuriated me so much. Like whenever the teacher came onto the screen, my blood just boiled. Like I just despise him. I hate him. He is one of the worst characters, if not the worst characters, that I've read about in my entire life. Like just the most disgusting human being ever. Just ugh. Even thinking about him now, it just makes me angry. But yeah, this was a very impactful book. It was very impactful, and you know, I guess I'm happy I read it. It felt like an important book to read. But yeah, it was an interesting book for sure. Moving on to a non-toxic book, I read These Infinite Threads by Tahira Mafi, and I did not enjoy This Woven Kingdom that much. I read This Woven Kingdom in 2023, and I gave that like a 3-star rating. I did not really enjoy that book because I found the pacing of it to be so slow. I mean, she's a brilliant writer. She is the author of the Shatter Me series, which is one of my favorite book series of all time. And when I read the Shatter Me series and heard about this new series, I was basically thinking, oh, this series will be just like Shatter Me, but only in a fantasy setting. And I was so wrong. The writing style is so much more descriptive in this series, and I feel like there's so much more character depth and character, it's very character driven, and I didn't expect that going in. But now, when I read the sequel, I knew what to expect going in. I knew not to expect like a super fast paced plot, and that it was going to go a bit slower. And when I knew what to expect going into These Infinite Threads, I enjoyed that book so much. I give it 4 stars, and it's a very strong 4-star rating. And I'm definitely going to continue with this series because the third book is out right now, so I can't wait to read that soon. But I really enjoyed this. I can't talk about the plot too much, of course. If I did, I would spoil everything basically. But there's a really brilliant enemies to lovers dynamic. It's this amazing romantasy. It's YA. It's so good. The main character, Eliza, is just an angel. I love her so much, and I love Cyrus as well. And I loved like the different POVs. Her POV was definitely my favorite. There's another character named Cameron. I'm not crazy about his POV, but his POV does have some interesting fantasy politics happening. So that aspect was interesting to focus on, but I just loved Eliza. I found her to be so much more likable than Cameron. I really did. And I would just much rather have been able to stay in her POV for the majority of the book. But overall, it was really good, and I'm excited to see what happens in book number 3 and to see what's going on with these characters. And yeah, it's a very interesting series. The next book I read was The Teacher by Frida McFadden, and I love Frida McFadden books so much. Whenever I feel myself going into a reading slump, I will read a Frida McFadden book and she will save the day. I will say that her plot twists can be very easy for me to guess. I did guess the plot twist, at least one of the plot twists in this book, and I feel like it's because if you read enough of her books, I feel like you will end up guessing every plot twist. But still, her books are just always such a fun and breezy time. Her writing style is just very, easy to get through and very fast paced, which I love. And this book was it was very interesting. I loved a lot about it, and then there were a lot of things that I did not like about it. But 4.5, still really good. It's about these two characters. One of them is Addie, who is a student at this high school. The other character is Eve. She's a teacher, and both of them have these really big secrets, and you're in both of their POVs, and eventually their secrets end up unraveling, and there's this big plot twist at the end of the book, and then another little plot twist at the end of the book that shocked me to my core. I was shocked with that final little plot twist. Did not see that coming at all. But it was a fun, quick thriller. And, it wasn't even so much a thriller, it was more so just a dark mystery, but still really easy to get through, and I would recommend it. We have some more books that I read in February. I told you February was a really good reading month for me in terms of how many books I was able to read. I read The Heart of Betrayal by Mary E. Pearson, second book in the Remnant Chronicles. I loved this book. It was so good. I enjoyed The Kiss of Deception as well, but this second book in the series just was on a whole upper level of amazing. I give it 4.5. It had such good fantasy politics, so many fun POVs. You're getting 3 different POVs. You're getting the main character, who is the princess. You're getting her love interest. You're getting the person who is kind of like a potential love interest, but he's a bit more morally gray. And it's just such a fun book. So much good fantasy politics happening, new characters as well, and just such fun dynamics and such a good writing style in this series. I absolutely loved this book, and I totally recommend that you check out The Remnant Chronicles. So good. The next book I read was The Cousins by Karen M. McManus. I absolutely love One of Us is Lying. I read that book forever ago. It was so good. And I also loved One of Us is Next or something. I think that's what it's called. The second book in the One of Us is Lying series. I have not finished that series yet, but those are the books that really made me love Karen M. McManus as a writer. This book was okay. I gave it 3 stars because I read it in like 4 hours on a Sunday. Super easy to get through, but I would be lying if I could tell you that I could remember the plot, because I do not. All I know is that it was like 3 kids, cousins, going somewhere to their grandmother's place for like the summer, and then some big secret happens. I know I'm so good at telling you the plot. I'm so good. But I can't remember. I really can't. It was just very forgettable, but I'm happy that I finally got it off the TBR because it's been in my shelf for so long. But it was nothing extraordinary. I only give it 3 stars because I remember liking the romance subplot, and I think the plot twist was pretty good, but otherwise it was just a pretty bland book, pretty basic, nothing super special, but it was okay. It wasn't a bad book, but it wasn't great either. The next book I read was Curse of the Wolf King. Oh my goodness, I loved this book. It was so close to being 5 stars, so close. The beginning was a little bit slow for me, but if it hadn't been slow, then it would have been 5 stars. But I gave it 4.75, which is obviously still an absolutely like amazing rating. I love this book, and I will recommend it like every single time I get the chance. I love retellings, especially Beauty and the Beast retelling, which this is, and it's the first book in the Entangled with Fae series. So you're getting a really fun fairy tale retelling with Fae added into it, and I think that's such a fun, unique twist. The main character, Gemma, was really, really charming, very easy to quickly root for her and love her character, and the romance in this book is enemies to lovers, my favorite trope, the best trope in the entire world. Like, I will always say it's the best trope, and it was executed so wonderfully in this book, and it was just so good. It's better if you go into it not knowing too much about the characters and how they find themselves in a romance, but it was so enjoyable. The writing style was really good, and I just loved the atmosphere of the book as well. And oh, it was just amazing. Then I read The Perfect Son by Frida McFadden. This was a 5-star read for me. And listen, this book is nowhere near as good as the Housemaid series. Like those books, well, at least the first Housemaid book and the second one are both massive 5 stars for me. I love those books so much. This one wasn't like remarkable. This is definitely not the best 5-star read I've ever given out, but if a book makes me happy and I have a good time with it, I'm gonna give it 5 stars. It doesn't need to be a masterpiece or to be super eloquently written for me to give it 5 stars. If I have a fun time with it, then it's getting 5 stars. And this book I pretty much read in about 4 hours, super, super fast paced, super short chapters, and such a fun plot twist that I kind of guessed. I was like 50-50 on it, but it was really fun. And there is such a funny scene in this book near the end in the villain's POV, and I laughed for like 30 minutes straight. And it's one of those scenes that no one else is going to find funny when you read it. You're not going to think anything of it. It involves holy water. That's all I'm going to say. But it was so funny to me because I laugh at like the dumbest stuff. But I was like, okay, there's no way I'm not going to give a book that is made me laugh for 30 minutes. There's no way I'm not going to give this 5 stars now. It was so funny. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. You know, I didn't find anything in it that I disliked. It was just a super fun book and 5 stars. Very, very good. Next, we have the last books that I read in February. These are all kind of like super short story novellas. And I know that they don't technically count, but they kind of do though, because some of these are like 80 pages long, which is obviously not long, but still, I count them towards my reading goal, as I should. But in any case, Amazon Prime, not Amazon Prime, Amazon Kindle Unlimited basically did this super cool partnership with a bunch of romance authors where they got them all to write these short stories. And I love this. This is so fun. They did it for Valentine's Day. I'm hoping that they keep this tradition going hopefully next year. Like I would love to see other romance authors do this, like Lynn Painter and Emily Henry. That would be so much fun to see other romance authors collab and do short stories. The first book in this little collab is The Exception to the Rule, written by Christina and Lauren. They are such amazing authors. I absolutely love The Unhoneymooners, and Love in Other Words is like my favorite, one of my, well, not my favorite, but one of my all-time favorite romance books I've read in my entire life. And this was a really cute short story. I gave it 3.75. You know, some parts were not my favorite, but then some parts were. I really liked the format of the emails. I think that was super fun to read about two people getting closer and connecting through emails because, you know, it's super amazing to talk to strangers online. But in all seriousness, it was super cute and very romantic. The second book was my favorite in this collab. This is Worst Wingman Ever by Abby Jimenez. And, you know, it was my first ever time reading anything that Abby Jimenez has written. I'm praying I'm saying her last name correctly. I know that she's a very popular author. I can't wait to read Part of Your World and Yours Truly and Just for the Summer. Her books have been blowing up, and I really adored her writing style. This wasn't even like super duper romantic. It felt more emotional. You know, both of the characters were going through these super emotional situations. And I was like, how in the world is this short story that's like 60 pages long making me cry? You know, these characters that I haven't even been spending a super long time with, I'm crying for them and what they're going through. Super emotional. And I really just loved the writing style and the way that she conveyed the way that the characters were feeling about certain situations happening. And it just was very wholesome. It was like, that's the best word I can use to describe this book. It was super duper wholesome and definitely my favorite short story out of all 6. The third book in this little collab is Rosie and the Dreamboat by Sally Thorne, who wrote The Hating Game, which is if you're new here, you need to know that The Hating Game is my favorite thing on this planet. It is the biggest, fattest 6-star read I've ever given out, ever. My first ever romance book I've read in my entire life. My first ever adult romance book that I've read was The Hating Game, and it will just always hold a special place in my heart. I love Lucy and Josh so much. But this is a short story by Sally Thorne, and it's basically about this super klutzy girl and her sister having a spa day, and she ends up getting stuck in this little machine thing, and then this fireman has to come and rescue her, and he's just super good at keeping her anxiety away and super good at just talking to her and asking her questions to keep her calm, and they form this cute little connection, and it was super adorable. I loved the way that he kept calming her down and helping with her anxiety, because I have anxiety. I have such bad social anxiety, so that was fun to see some anxiety representation, and I just really liked their dynamic. I wish that we could have seen more of them, because I feel like they just kind of stayed in the spa area. I would have liked to have seen them maybe go out on a date or something like that. And maybe I would have given it a higher rating if I would have seen them go on a date or something. But it was still super funny, super cute, super romantic, and I really enjoyed it. The next book was Drop, Cover, and Hold by Jasmine Gulbori. I know I'm saying that wrong, and I'm so sorry. This was my first time ever reading anything by her, and the beginning of the book felt interesting because the writing style was very intriguing, but it felt like it didn't belong in a rom-com. It felt like I was reading a writing style that belonged in a cozy fantasy book. It was kind of giving Heartless by Marissa Meyer vibes, and that's not a bad thing. I just felt the writing style and the vibe was out of place for a short story rom-com, and I just didn't love this book. Obviously not. I gave it 2.5 stars, so obviously I didn't enjoy it that much. Um, the trope in this book is grumpy sunshine, which is fun. I actually adore that trope so much. I just don't think it was executed properly, and I felt like it just was too lusty for my liking, which I'm fine with that, but there needs to be a good emotional connection established with both characters. And this book was lacking in the emotional connection so much. I don't think it was horrible writing, it was just really cliche, really super physical attraction based, which is not my favorite thing when it's missing the emotional bond as well. I mean, I'm all for physical attraction in books. I am. I really, really am. We're going to talk about that once we get to my May reading wrap up. But yeah, it was just not it. It was not it. You know, it wasn't. It wasn't. The next book was With Any Luck by Ashley Poston, another author who is super duper popular. She is the author of The Dead Romantics and The 7-Year Slip, which is blowing up. I will be reading that book super soon, but yeah, she is super popular, and I really like her writing style. I think it's unique. I think she has this really cool like thing where she takes rom-coms and then she adds magical realism to them, which I think is such a fun plot twist to elevate a good rom-com. And I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't mind-blowing, and I didn't love the romance because again it felt a little bit too physical and not enough of a good balance between physical and emotional for me. But the writing style was very witty, it was very clever, it was very cute and fun, and another book with like a wedding plot going on. I love reading about weddings and watching movies with weddings. I love weddings. But anyways, this was just a cute, fun, quick, easy romantic time, and yeah, it was nothing spectacular, but it was adorable. The last book in this little romance collaboration series was Royal Valentine by Soraya Wilson. Again, I've never read anything by this author, but I don't know if I will be reading anything by her after this book. I gave this 2 stars, and that's me being generous. If this was any longer than 60 pages, then it probably would have been a DNF or a 1 star. This book has one of my least favorite tropes in the entire world. It has insta love. I hate insta love so, so much, and it's even worse in a short story. And maybe the author was thinking, if this is going to be a super short story, then I may as well have these characters form a connection super quick. But it just was so boring and basic and bland. There's nothing I really enjoyed about this book aside from the fact that it was so quick. But yeah, it was just a shame because I wanted this big collab series to end out on like a big bang. I wanted the last book to be really good, and this one just wasn't. I did like the fact that they were royalty though. That was kind of fun, but still, insta love, it just spoiled the whole thing. It really, really did. This is the end of part 1. I could go on and on and on because I have the gift of the gab and I love to just never shut my mouth, but I don't want this video to be 10 hours long, so that's why it's going to be broken up into 3 different parts. So the next part will be discussing all the books I read in March and April, and then the last part will be all the books I read in May and June. I will try and have part 2 sometime next week, hopefully. And I just hope you guys enjoyed this video and hearing me ramble about all of these books. I hope I was able to give you some fun book recommendations, maybe some of these books you haven't heard about before, and maybe want to add them to your TBR, hopefully. And please let me know in the comments some of your favorite top books of the year and some books that maybe you disliked this year as well, and books that you're excited to read before 2024 is over. And thank you all so much for watching or just clicking on this video. I can't believe I almost have 200 subscribers. That's insane to me, to almost have 200 subscribers. That's just wild. So thank you all so much. I love you all to the moon and back. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, and happy reading to you. I love you so much.